Greetings and welcome to another video by Sir Mike the Hedge Knight. We have a new addition, a new character in the game. It's another member of the Blacks faction. It is Jacaerys, commonly called Jace Velaryon, the Good Prince. So they took a little bit of a break from introducing some members of the Blacks, and we thought, oh, they're probably done, and nope, here comes another one. So let's dive in. He is a blue fighter. Now, the first thing I noticed is his might is not impressive, which is okay. And when I did the video on Dunk a couple of weeks ago, I think his might, and remember when they showed this, they're showing level 357 star, but I assume no equipment. This is just a raw character. So Dunk's might, I think, was like 204. And I said, wow, wait until you put some legendary gear on this guy. We're always worried as games like this go on about power creep. I've mentioned that in several videos before, meaning that as new characters come out, they're going to be stronger and stronger. That every time one comes out, it sort of makes all the old characters, I don't want to say obsolete, but just a little bit behind the curve, and they have to do that to generate sales. You put out a character that's the same as the old characters. Well, why do I need them? I've got this old character that does the same thing. So there's always going to be a little bit of power creep. I felt that with Dunk, and now looking at Jace, his might is 175. That being said, we don't really, or at least I don't know exactly how they calculate might, but I see some characters with really high might that do not fear me in raid. And then you see a character like this, and you'll see as we get in that when I see Jason raid, I'm not going to care that his might looks like it's low. I think that's a little deceptive. Looking at his other stats, 55.5k attack, very, very strong. Not the strongest in the game. I think Lenor Velaryon was over 60, maybe even 65. Something's just like off the chart. Defense of just under 41,000. He's a fighter. His attack should be higher than his defense. And 120,000 hit points is, decent enough, but probably goes quick for a low defense character. Jace has a fast speed skill. He gains a fury and grants all team members, so that'll include himself, a 25% critical strike chance for 2 turns. So let's stop there for a second. One of the things that I like, even though it's fun to mash buttons and, as soon as the skill pops up, you hit them, I never really played a Greyjoy team. I think I messed around with it once. They were all low level just to kind of see. But one of the things I liked there was you sort of you had to think. Some people have to use their skills first to get a benefit, like Theon, I know was one. I think Lenor was one. Some people had to use their skills not first. Corlys, I think Euron, Greyjoy. And even though that could be a little frustrating as far as timing, it also opened the door to strategic play. So it's not just putting your brain on autopilot and I can match these gens and someone has a skill, let me hit that. You had to think a little. And you had to, sometimes you would hold back and say, wait, I don't want to use Corlys or Euron yet. Theon's almost ready. Let me get Theon first and he'll put on, things like that. So now factor in that, Jace is adding a buff, a good buff. Critical strike chance is good. Characters have an innate 10% chance for a critical strike. It seems to not come up very often. Some have a little bit more with their iconic or certain skills or whatever, but going from 10% to 35%, that's a big jump, especially when you're talking about someone that has an AoE ability. Let's say like a Daenerys, Red Dany, who's often used on what we've called Blackfire teams, half Targaryens and half members of the Blacks, usually Purple Rhaenyra and Rhaenys. So when you're hitting 5 enemies, if you have a 10% critical strike chance, you might get one. Once in a blue moon you get 2. Often you're going to get 0. Little disappointing. Now take that 10% chance, bump it up to 35% chance, and you're probably going to get a couple. Like there's a good chance you're going to get 2. You might even get 3. So this is a pretty significant buff, but it's only 2 turns. So it's the 2 turns looks like, I'm sure some people say, it's only 2 turns, who cares? Well, you know what? It opens the door to strategic play. Maybe I have to time, maybe Jace is his skill ready. Let me wait another turn or 2 to get other members of my team, get their skills up so they can avail themselves of this buff to maximize the benefit of his skill. And then we get to the second part of the skill. So not only does he gain fury, and not only is he buffing the entire team a decent amount of critical strike chance, he deals 340% damage based on his attack, and he is a fighter. Also fire damage, not physical. So forget the fury, forget the buff for a second. He is a fighter with a fast speed single target skill, doing 340% of his attack as damage. That is, my jaw hit the floor when I'm like, I keep reading it and thinking I'm missing something. I compare him to like Blue Joffrey, who I'm very familiar with, also a blue fighter. Decent attack, decent single target hit, but I don't think he's anywhere near 340%. And he's slow. This is fast. This is going to trigger multiple times per combat. Especially, the blacks are a defensive. They've got a lot of firepower, but it usually takes them a little time to build up. Their faction bonus is defense. So the idea is that they're trying to stick around for a bit, build up some fury, get to enraged, and then they can, bring the hammer down type of thing. So they're not going to win on turn 3. They're going to win on turn 12, type of thing. And they'll probably be in control by turn 9, let's say. But, in 12, 13, 14 turns, you might get Jace's skill off 2 times on a really good board, perhaps even 3. And to do this kind of damage with that speed skill, that alone is good. That he's also getting Fury and buffing the whole team, really very. So again, when I said in the beginning, his might looks a little bit low. I don't know. So far looks pretty good. So far, I'm pretty impressed. Moving on to his leadership ability, and this is where I really, if you thought I was, giddy about his active skill, this is where I feel like this to me is the selling point for Jace. At the start of battle, Jace and his allies have a 75% chance to gain up to 2 Fury. Now, I assume that, like everything else in the game, that's 2 different rolls. So it won't be 0 or 2. You'll start with 0 or 1 or 2. 75% sounds like 0 is a bit of a rarity. Generally, you're going to start with 1, but fairly often you're going to start with 2. And, we'll get into this a little bit later, but, one of the drawbacks of the Blacks faction when they came out is the getting to enraged is great, but it takes time to get to enraged. And what if I'm dead by then? What about going against the Greens and going against Free Cities teams or even Baratheon gem popping teams that can be pretty quick? So if it takes so long to get to enrage when my skills can really shine and my abilities can really do well, if half my team is already defeated, I'm not going to do so well. So now here is a huge boost to Fury at the start of combat. In addition, each time a team member gains Fury, they also gain 15% critical strike chance for 2 turns. So again, we see the 2 turns. At the start of combat, getting critical strike chance. How many people outside of the Greens or Free Cities, whatever, do you often get your skills off in the first 2 turns? Now, Jace is a fast speed, so if you get a couple of good blue matches, maybe you will. Maybe you can get his skill off very early, but this is any time a team member gains Fury. So as you know, with the Blacks, they're always putting out Fury. Danny's Iconic is putting out Fury. There are other ways of getting Fury, and again, it's going to be something that I think you have to sort of pay attention to. That's his leadership ability. We're going to spend a little more time on that, but first let's go down and take a look at his passive. When Jace gains Fury, he gains 15% critical damage for 2 turns. So we're seeing a lot of these 2 turns. So you're going to have to maximize these abilities. And listen, critical damage 15% small. Critical strike chance about 15%. I mean, critical strike chance I think is better than critical strike damage. I want to get the crit more than just do a little more with the critical strike is going to do 33% more damage to begin with. But critical damage does nothing if you don't actually score a critical hit. So when he gains Fury, he gains 15% critical damage for 2 turns. When he becomes enraged, enemies suffer a negative 20% durability debuff. Let's do a quick refresher on enraged and durability because they're fairly similar. When you have 5 Fury, and Fury on its own will generate a little more stamina and enhance the effective enraged status by 3%. But when you have 5 stacks of Fury, you will become enraged. Enraged cannot be removed. Enraged targets take 50% less damage from champion skills and traits. 50%. So many teams out there do the bulk of their damage with skills. And when they say skills, traits, abilities, other than skills, like traits and abilities, I feel like they use these somewhat interchangeably. Skills, traits, abilities, passives, leadership, what have you. 50% less damage against what most teams are built around to do their damage, like other than fire teams that do their damage with fire, or perhaps Baratheon teams that do their damage with gems and gem buffs. Everyone's, even the Starks, they're doing ice to get you to brittle, but what's the point of brittle? the most part. I mean, it slows you down. Brittle means you're going to take double damage from skills. Well, here's Enraged. 50% less is very strong. Also, remember the Black's faction, their faction bonus, as of now, they haven't done anything to change factions yet, is to add, if you have 5 members of the Blacks, you add 15% defense. So they're building defense. Now you get Enraged. Going to be tough to take down. Refresher for durability. Kind of similar, the percentage increase or decrease of incoming damage from skills and abilities. If you have a 20% durability debuff, that means you're going to take 20% more damage from skills and abilities. So when Jace becomes enraged, he throws this debuff on the entire enemy team, and they're prevented from taunt and stealth for 4 turns. I assume if they've already got taunt on or stealth, it will be removed, and they will not be able to reapply it for 4 turns. So now you can pick your targets. You don't have to worry about, oh, Ned's got his taunt on the whole fight because of his iconic, so I can't hit Arya in the back. I can't hit Theon. I can't hit the damage dealer. Don't have to worry about that. So they can't hide behind taunt and stealth. They're going to take 20% more damage from skills, abilities, traits, what have you. Really, really good passive when he becomes enraged. The Blacks came out. They started with Purple Rhaenyra. I misinterpreted her skill. Her passive skill, I believe, when any team member, not just allies, but when any team member goes below 25%, she'll heal them 10% of their max HP based on how many stacks of Fury she has. So 5 stacks of Fury would be 50% heal. But the way they worded the skill, it said the first time, and I misunderstood that to think that it only triggers once. It's actually the first time per team member. So in theory, that can trigger 5 times. So when I see Blackfire teams in Raid, which they're the sort of meta, I guess, kinda. Now that Brienne's been nerfed and shield teams are just decimated. When I see Rhaenyra on an enemy team, I'm going after her first. Because you go after someone else and she just throws this whopping heal on them, it's going to take forever to take them down. So take Rhaenyra out first. Now she can heal herself, but hopefully you take her down before she's built up enough fury so the heal is fairly small. Take her out and then move on. So Purple Rhaenyra came out. She was the first member. And, as a free-to-play or a light spender, you can't get everybody. And when they introduce a new faction that late in the game, it's like, well, if I get Purple Rhaenyra, that's one cast. She's good, better than I thought she was. But, if I build her, I won't be able to build the next one and the one after. If you're going to introduce a new faction, you got to get like at least 3 of them, I figure. Getting one by themselves, just not enough. So I shied away from Purple Rhaenyra. Rhaenys, also a good character. I don't think as strong as Rhaenyra, but pretty good. But they did fire, and they were dual faction, Blacks and Targaryens. So now you have these Blackfire teams out there. So that was interesting. Then when they got back to the Blacks faction, they brought out Corlys and Laenor. And they were more like the Greyjoys. They did raid. They did nothing with fire. They did raid. So I felt like the faction itself was sort of split in half, sort of fractured. Half of them are good with fire. Half of them are good with raid. But if you put them all together on the same team, I mean, yeah, you'll build fury faster. Getting to enraged is good. But, having some of them do a little bit of fire, getting 2 to 3 stacks of fire on the enemy, that's not going to be enough. You need a dedicated fire team. You need to get, if you're playing a fire team, you need to get those stacks of fire to like 7, 8 and above, ideally 9 or 10. That's when the damage is really just off the chart. As for raid, if you put Corlys and Laenor with the Greyjoys and they're all triggering off each other and doing different things with raid, that's great. By themselves, putting raid is okay. Reduces physical resistance. I think it's 3.5%. If you kill a raided enemy, you get like a tiny heal, like 1.75% max HP heal. It's okay, but they didn't really work together. And now you introduce Jace, and Jace does neither fire nor raid. And ironically, I think he brings the faction together. I really think he brings the faction together because I think, like I said before, I think the biggest problem with the Blacks faction was enraged is great, but it takes too long to get there, even with their defense buff. And now you bring in Jace and you make him a leader. And before I forget, let's say this. If you're thinking about going after Jace and you're thinking about what teams you're going to put him on, but you're not planning on making him the leader, I don't his single target attack, fast, really, really good. But there's other characters in the game that hit hard. or hit quick. I wouldn't get him just for that. His passive is good. It's not great. It's good. But I think it's his leadership ability that really makes Jace shine and actually makes me think, boy, I wish I had 5 members of the Blacks. So whereas before Jace came out, it's I wish I had Rhaenyra and Rhaenys to make a Blackfire team. If you really like the Greyjoys, it's like I think a left-handed wrench or something. It's a little I don't know too many people that love the Greyjoys, but if you want to work off the raid mechanic, Corlys and Laenor, sure. But now you can bring these guys together, and you might be able to win with just brute force because Jace is going to build your fury so fast. Now instead of waiting until turn 9 or 10 to get enraged, or maybe get lucky one person gets enraged a little bit early. It's only one. Now you're getting to enraged status sooner. On his passive, when he becomes enraged, durability debuff, a decent durability debuff for 4 turns, we could just unload type of thing. Also gets rid of his taunt and stealth. But you got to get to enraged. And I thought that was the big problem with the Blacks faction, was that it was going to take too long to become, by the time you got it enraged, 1 or 2 people were enraged, they were the only people left, everyone else was dead, and the fight was over. Now you bring him in. I think Purple Rhaenyra, I think as part of her kit, I don't recall where it is, I think it's her passive, when anyone gains a fury, there's a 50% chance of gaining more fury. So you could start with 3 fury. You could start with 3 fury. If Jace triggers twice at 75% and Rhaenyra triggered, now it's not going to happen every time, but you only need 5 to get to enrage. Now you throw in someone like a Red Daenerys. If you didn't want to go all Blacks members, and her iconic. She's adding fury left and right with a 20 or 25% chance to give someone else a fury. But even without her, Jason can get this faction together to a point where you can start hitting that enraged status much earlier in combat before a key member is taken out. Once they become enraged, they're taking 50% damage from enemy skills and abilities, so they have much more survivability. Now you're building up fury on everyone else, getting everyone to enraged status, and as you see, they all do wonderful things. They all do something different when they become enraged. I really think Jace specifically makes an All Blacks team a viable team. And before Jace, I didn't see it, but again, and I can't say it enough, got to make him the leader. Now, I don't play the Blacks. I can't tell you off the top of my head what all of their other leadership abilities are. I know that they're all pretty good, and you can only have one leader. It's a problem. But if you're going for Jace, I think you got to be going for him for his leadership ability. Comment below. Let me know what you think of Jacaerys Velaryon, and we will see you soon.